I'm the Philosophical Bachelor, and today I want to talk about non-duality. When I open my eyes, I see the outside world, but I do not see myself. There seems to be two sets of things. There is what is out there, and then there is the I interacting with it. The not I and the I. This is our usual understanding of the world, where there are a multiplicity of things separated from one another, but even more crucially, that these things are separated from me. I can reach out and touch that table. I can look at it, I can hear it when I thump it, I can even lick it and taste it if I so desired, and sniff the scent of the wood. But one thing seems certain. That table is not me, and I am not the table. Is this the structure of reality? Consider a runner running. Is the runner and her running separate? If there is no running, can the runner still be considered a runner? Rene Descartes famously said, cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. But can there be thought without a thinker? Is the separation of subject from object, the separation of subject from predicate in a proposition of language, a true reflection of reality, or is it just a mental construction, our way of passing reality up in order to more easily comprehend it? For David Loy, it is the latter. He asserts in his 1988 book, Nonduality, a study in comparative philosophy, that the true nature of reality is non-dual, that our dualistic understanding, seemingly natural, is a misunderstanding of what reality is. He adopts a synthetic approach, with his main reference material coming from the philosophies of Mahayana Buddhism, Advaita Vedanta, and Taoism as non-dualistic systems, though he also considers Western philosophers and mystics such as Martin Heidegger, Jean-Paul Sartre, Jacques Derrida, Arthur Schopenhauer, David Hume, Immanuel Kant, and Meister Eckhart. Though he references the religious traditions, Loy's approach is non-doctrinal. My approach in this essay will be even more non-doctrinal than his. Loy passes out 5 meanings of non-duality, focusing in his book on the first 3. 1. Thinking that does not employ dualistic concepts. 2. Non-plurality of phenomena. 3. Non-difference of subject and object. 4. Samsara is nirvana. And 5. The mystical unity of God and man. Conceptual thinking influences and is influenced by language. Language reflects dualistic categories in its subject-predicate structure. It presents oppositions such as being versus non-being, something versus nothing, pure versus impure, and good versus evil. These structures of language then structure the way we think when we think conceptually, which we then superimpose on direct immediate experience. According to Loy, such thought construction distorts immediate experience. But it is not merely language that is the problem. Our usual lived experience of the world is dualistic, with a collection of discrete objects, including I, interacting causally in space and time. The alternative is a non-dualistic lived experience of the world as unity, where not only is the external world of objects united, but we are united with it, where the I as subject is part of the whole. The whole is not truly whole if the subject is separate from it, he notes. The sense of separation, hence alienation between myself and the world I am in, is the root delusion that needs to be overcome. Loy examines human perception, action, and thinking, where our usual sense of duality in each superimposes and interacts, obscuring and interfering with one another's true non-dual nature. He writes, the material objects of the external world are non-dual percepts, objectified by thought superimposition and by our attempts to grasp them. Dualistic action is due to the superimposition of intention upon non-dual action, and that network of intentions both presupposes and reinforces the objectivity of its field of play. Both concepts and intentions occur when non-dual thinking is related to percepts and actions rather than experienced as it is in itself. The solution would then be to eradicate the superimpositions of conceptual thought and intentions. What happens then? Loy answers, when the percept is differentiated from all its thought's superimposition, there is no awareness of any duality between that which is perceived and that which perceives. However, our usual understanding hypostasizes such percepts into material objects, but in themselves they are empty because they have no self-nature. They are only the phenomenal manifestation of a qualityless mind, of nothing. If we manage to still our thoughts and intentions, the separation between ourselves and things will dissolve, leaving a pure direct experience. It will then seem that all that exists is not us as subject or the thing as object, but only the experience, which belongs neither only to the subject or only to the object. Using past memories and concepts formed from previous experiences, our mind makes sense of direct perception by automatically superimposing these learned concepts, turning them into conceptions. This means that to have a non-dualistic experience, we need to de-automatize our perceptions, one way to do so being meditation. Loy turns to the Taoist concept of wu-wei, non-action. Non-action is not to have no actions, but to act naturally. Following the non-dualism Loy presents, it is for the subject and the action to be one and the same. He tells us that wei wu-wei, the action of non-action, is not mere passivity, but it is to act without intention, so as to have intentionless action. The action will then be in accord with our nature, flowing naturally from our intentionless self. When we act with intention, it bifurcates agent from act, giving rise to a mind-body dualism. If the sense of self is maintained by intention, then eliminating intention will also eliminate that sense of self, adds Loy. In a non-dual action, the actor and the act are not distinct, not separated. The actor is the act. But what then causes our action if not our intention? Causal relationships are built into language, notes Loy. The concept of causality has been problematized by Hume, who argues that causality is merely a habit we developed from consistently seeing a specific occurrence following a particular event. We usually take the prior event, A, as cause and the later event, B, as effect, but Hume deconstructs this apparent causal connection of A and B as a matter of constant conjunction, contiguity in time and space, and priority in time. According to Hume, we never experience causality but only conjunction. As Kant later explains, causality is part of the cognitive machinery of our understanding, which we use to make sense of events. It hence need not necessarily be in the thing in itself, or rather, Kant tells us that we have no way of knowing noumena, as we only experience phenomena. Hence, he is agnostic on what noumena is like. Likewise, we need not assume intentions are needed to cause actions. However, intentions are how we express our agency in our acts. If we suppress our intentions and hence our agency, does this mean that there is no free will for the non-dualist? Loy writes, the problem of freedom versus determinism is dualistic in presupposing a self whose actions are either free or determined. This problem is dissolved in non-duality, or as Loy would insist, in reality, since if I am the universe, then complete determinism becomes equivalent to absolute freedom. Free will is to act in accordance with our character and to not be obstructed. If the distinction between subject and object is dissolved, we are then the whole, the universe. Since the universe is absolutely everything, Whatever actions that happen in it will simply be consistent with its character and be unobstructed, as there is nothing that can obstruct it, since there is nothing else besides the universe. In non-dualism, there is no distinction between the knower, the object to be known, and the act of knowing. No thinker apart from the thought, surmises Loy. As already mentioned, thought construction is the superimposition of conceptual thought onto direct experience, of acts as well as thoughts. These superimposed thoughts come from memories and concepts formed from previous experiences. Hence, in order to have a non-dual experience, a pure experience, the linkage of thoughts needs to be broken, such that each thought is individual and unsupported by other thoughts, the way causality is overcome by not linking the supposed cause and its supposed effect, or agency by not having intentions coupled with actions. Everything is its own cause and its own effect, writes Loy. Thoughts would then seem to just creatively spring up spontaneously. To further elucidate non-duality, Loy turns to the closely related concept of emptiness. There is emptiness in non-duality in three senses. 1. With both subject and object denied, non-dual experiences are empty of subject-object duality, with no distinct consciousness separate from the experience. While approaches such as idealism and materialism deny the object or the subject respectively, both subject and object are denied in non-dualism, since they only make sense in relation to each other, are meaningless without the other. 2. By forgetting oneself through discarding conceptual thought and intentions, one transcends to emptiness. 3. All-encompassing attributeless mind can be phenomenologically experienced only as a nothingness that is creative because it is the source of all phenomena, writes Loy. Using the matter of vision, the eye must be clear in order to see clearly. If the eye has a red lens, for instance, then everything seen will be colored red. Likewise, for the mind to be able to experience phenomena purely, it itself must have no qualities, be empty, so that it does not superimpose anything onto the experience. What does non-dualism mean for spirituality? Loy turns to Mahayana Buddhism for the answer. Enlightenment does not involve transcending the world and attaining some other non-sensuous realm, for the transcendental is nothing other than the empty nature of this world. Samsara is nirvana. To penetrate through to the nature of reality is not to rise above to some heavenly realm of Platonic forms or paradise, but to empty our minds of presuppositions that contaminate the pure phenomena. When we do that, we achieve unity with the universe, because there is then no us versus them, but simply a pure unified experience. But is non-dualism then a doctrine of quietism? As earlier explained, Wei Wu Wei does not mean inaction, but acting naturally in line with our character and nature, without intention and grasping. Is non-dualism anti-intellectual? Non-dual intellect is our most creative faculty, asserts Loy. He dismisses these misunderstandings of quietism and anti-intellectualism as overreactions against their respective dualistic modes of experience. What he wants is not to negate each dualistic mode, but to transform it into the non-dualistic mode. Language is inherently dualistic with its subject-predicate structure and oppositions, and hence is unable to fully express non-dualism. When we think using propositions, we hence think dualistically. However, that is a problem only if we consider knowledge and the intellect to be only propositional. If we can accept that there are other forms of knowledge in addition to what can be expressed in words, then non-dualism can have a place in our intellect. This is not so unusual. We already know well that, for instance, sensory experiences cannot be completely described. For a person who has never seen purple or tasted bitterness, no amount of words can explain the experience. Similarly, mystical experiences may convey knowledge, but that knowledge is not conveyed in words. We see this ineffability throughout Loy's book also, where he can only explain the form or structure of non-dualism and argue for its validity using the tools of reason such as logic, metaphors, and concepts, but does not or is unable to describe non-dual experience itself, since such an experience exceeds the capabilities of language, which is inherently dualistic. The same applies in books written by mystics. If non-dualism is reality, why are there multiple non-dualistic religious traditions that not only espouse different doctrines but have differing, even contradictory, ontological claims? Loy devotes the second half of his book to answer this question. He observes that Advaita Vedanta is monistic, Sankhya Yoga is dualistic, early Buddhism seems to be pluralistic, and Madhyamika denies both that things exist and that they do not exist. Specifically between Vedanta and Buddhism, they are diametrically opposed. All self versus no self, substance versus modes, immutability versus impermanence, non-causality versus all conditionality, and no path versus only path. Loy argues that despite this opposition, they are phenomenologically equivalent if the dualism between them is truly negated. This dualism is caused primarily by language, since linguistic categories are inherently dualistic, leading to the tendency for descriptions of non-duality to eliminate one or the other of the dualistic pair. Loy believes that the crux of the difference is due to how the various traditions emphasize different aspects of the same non-dual experience. He holds that the experience itself involves no claims, ontological or otherwise, for it transcends philosophy. According to non-dualism, to get to the true nature of reality, we need to bypass conceptual thinking and our intentions, so as to be able to experience the experience as it is in itself, in its pure form. While to achieve the non-dual state is by no means easy, it is something immediately available to us, not in some heavenly realm or promised land that requires us to escape to somewhere, but is instead in the here and now. Thank you for listening to the Philosophical Bachelor.